All right, a little longer lead in than normal. I was had a different screen set up than I'm used to. All right, so Atlas Aultman, writer, speaker, veteran. Thanks for being here. In your bio information I was looking at, it said you talked about how to make life better immediately. So please, I need to know immediately. How do I make life better?
Immediately, people make decisions too hard. So I spent a lifetime looking at leaders and what decisions they make, and they really overcomplicate life. So immediately, how you can make your life simple is by taking things out of your head and then focusing on one thing. And a decision is that the whole matrix boils down into you taking everything out of your head, all this crap that you got going on in there, putting it on paper and making it real, and then looking at what can change your life right now. Whatever that is, whether it's an ice cream, a sandwich, or it's a big decision that you need to make that you've been waiting to make, that is your number one thing that you should be focused on. And then how you approach that is also simple. It's overcomplicated a lot. People like to put things in there to make themselves feel smart or seem smart. In reality, there's a lot of yes no questions that people can answer and make their life immediately better. So putting it all down on paper, do that. Figure out what it is that is important, do that. What that one thing is, that's called a target, not a goal. Goals get forgotten about, goals get missed, goals are stupid. And I know there's a lot of research that goes around goals, but really, when you take goals aside and you make one thing your target, your primary objective, you're allowed to really move fast. And that's how you can simplify your life. Figure out what that one thing is. That's the whole purpose of life.
Nice, nice. I got a lot of
Appreciate it.
like visuals off of that. First, writing. When you write, it helps you think. So I like the idea of writing it down because it organizes your thoughts. Two,
Yes.
it goes right in with my pickleball strategy, which is just get it over the net. Don't
Yeah.
don't try to be fancy. Don't try to look better than you are. And my number one rule of pickleball is less athletic. That's what I go with. If you think you need to jump for that to hit it, no, you just let it go. Or if you can reach it, reach it. But pickleball.
That's
And
fair.
then the other is thinking about having the target and focusing on that one thing, kind of like that video game Asteroid from
Mhm.
back in the day,
Yeah.
where you're just in the middle and you have that single shot and you're looking for that one thing. So concentrate on that, then concentrate on the next. I
I
like
like
it.
the asteroid example. I've never heard that. I'm going to use that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm writing
Use
that
that.
now.
Yeah. Just draw a picture.
Yeah. I
So
just did.
with writing, then when did you start writing? Like what was the first thing you remember writing?
I remember meeting. Now I've never shared this story, so this is the first time I've ever. I remember
Debut.
meeting. I remember meeting an author and thinking that guy's not special. And then I've heard quite frequently, as you probably have, that you have ideas that have changed my trajectory, my life, my plans, whatever it is. And they would ask me, do you write articles or anything like that? And no, I just think about what I'm going to say before I say it. And a lot of that comes down to writing. So I had been writing anyways. I do an old money habit of taking the day and writing down what I did on a calendar. So I fill out the calendar in reverse and then I try to fill it out for the future, but we don't know what the future looks like. So I don't live there. I put out the major targets that I'm going to hit. I have a morning target, a lunch target, and an evening target. And then my family obviously fits into that after evening target. So if you arrange it by 3 meals, you can figure out how to do 3 things where most people only think about doing one. And then by reviewing your day, by writing it all down, you can figure out what you missed and set up your targets for the next day. The great thing about targets is if you miss them, you can just reshoot. You can shoot again. And if you hit the target, then you could figure out whether you want to refine and hit the bullseye or if you want to move on to the next target. So I'm a big fan of targets, and that all came out of writing too. So writing was just something that was built into me. And after 30 years in the military, I took this giant collaboration of all the things that I had written down, and I took all the wins out of it, and it took me years. It took me 3 years, and I simplified it all, and then I made like a little book, like this book, and
Mm-hmm.
I sent it to my friends. I'm like, "What do you think about this?" And they're like, "This is great. This is gold." And I was like, "Oh, that's nice. You're my friend." And they were like, "No, seriously, it's good." And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "Can we send it?" One of my friends had a publisher at Harvard Business Review. He's like, "Hey, I'd like to send this over." And so I started talking to them, and then a little guy by the name of Dave Goggins, he was like, "Don't let anybody publish your book." And he put that out for the world. He's like, "Once they publish it, they own you." And I'm like, "Hey, Harvard, I need my book back so I just need that back." So that's kind of what started it. And then I got really knee deep into it with my kid. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you, when you were writing that, what were your writing utensils? Like, did you write it on paper to organize it? Did you use the computer? What programs?
Yeah. Absolutely paper. I mean, the first thoughts, I think the best writers write it down by hand. And that's one of the first things you learn to do in elementary school is like how to write with your hand. And that mind muscle connection that you get only when you write, it produces thoughts that you talked about earlier. You know, you think better when you write. Writing is thinking. So whenever you think about it and new things pop out because you're taking your time and your thoughts to write them down, you start to realize that the thought that you have is much deeper than what it actually is. And that's what writing is. But really, the books that people write, they're not real. They like to write about their wins and their successes. And like me, I write about like when Secret Service said that they were going to arrest me for stealing one of their vehicles. I mean, I'm not trying to hide some of the things that I have experienced so that other people will realize that it's a real book and that the things that I put in there are really me. But a lot of things that happened that I wrote down, I wouldn't have captured had I not written them down. I just would have lived on with life. And I think that's a big part of what you need to do as a writer. So writing it down by hand, and then I took that and I wrote it down again, and then I put it on a Word document, and then the formatting gets crazy. Whenever you're publishing books, it goes into a PDF. It goes into these little. There's 17 different programs I have on this computer that I'm talking to you right now, and they reformat things for EPUBs, for books, for masters of like social media. It goes out into different areas, and there's all different formats for writing. So those tools are cool. And when I was writing with my kid, when I wrote some of these lessons into kids' books with my kid, we did a lot of drawing. So he would figure out what the pictures would look like that would go along, and then we'd push that out to, Illustrator, and then he did most of the illustration editing. So that was a different tool set altogether.
Hmm. So when did you decide that you were going to make it into the children's version?
My kid
What was
came to
that thought
me.
process?
Yeah. My kid came to me when he was 13, and he's like, "Dad, I'm saving up money for a car. How do I make money?" And we grew up different, man. I used to mow lawns and like shovel snow when I was up north. I used to do manual labor. I used to have a paper route. Remember that? When people used to deliver papers, and that's how the news came, not on your phone. So I really put a lot of thought into that. And I'm like, buddy, I would write a book, man. Every billionaire's house that I've been to has a book on there that billionaire wrote. And he's like, whoa. I'm like, so that's just one of those things that people do whenever they're in places of influence or power, or if you're trying to make money, it's going to help you figure out what it is that you want to write about. So he's like, yeah, we should write a book. And I go, whoa, 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 dude, this is America. You're speaking French over there. I don't know what this we word is. I said, you write a book. And he's like, how about you write a book and I write a book? And you know how that went. I wrote a book, and he showed up to the table and he was like, let's publish this book. I can probably come up with the drawings. And that's how that went. So we published the book. The next day we were on the bestsellers list for Amazon. And I was like, what did we just do? So
Wow.
I got the pen and paper back out like I always do, and I started writing down. Like I started looking at the calendar and what I did. Then we did it again, and we got higher on the bestseller list. And then the third time we got to number one, and then we did it the fourth time before I published the book that I had been working on for close to 3 decades. We published the fourth one, and Amazon couldn't keep up. They were sold out for 3 weeks. So we made it to number two on that list on Amazon, and then it just kind of stopped. And I started working on this book with another publisher that said that they wouldn't own me. So let's put it that way.
So the first ones were all through KDP then?
No, I actually went through Ingram Spark. So the way I do, and this is all part of the process that a lot of people just won't tell you. I'll tell your listeners how to write a bestseller. This is how to do it. One, have a good idea that actually will teach you a lesson. If it's just a good story, that's cool. No one cares. There's a lot of noise out there. Don't contribute to the noise. Make something that is story worthy but teaches something. Two, get a good illustrator. I always go to like Fiverr or another source where you can hire people that are just freelance. There's a couple out there. Fiverr's a good one, but then it'll give you a broad scope on what you're getting for the money because they're going to give you a portfolio. It's the quickest way to get things done. The third thing it is, give them deadlines that you can meet into your life. So for me, I was doing 5 pages a week. So I'd send him 5 pages. This is what I want it to look like. He'd send it back. I would ask for edits, and then I would start another 5 pages. And then I would get through my 40 to 50 page book in about a month or 2 month cycle. I was ready to start moving into the process, which I'm going to expose to your audience right now. The Ingram Spark process is easy. You can go in, create an account, and then it will give you specific instructions on how the book should look. And then you need to figure out which size your book it should be. Like pick up a book and say, I want it to be this size. Like every book is a different size. The color red sells better than any other color. I went with gray because I think mine's a leadership book, and I think leadership is gray. So I went with gray. So I got a lot of guff on that. But with the book process, they'll tell you specific instructions on how it needs to be formatted, what it should be, if it's PDF or whatever. And then they'll have you do a cover, and then you need an ISBN, which is a book number that you can get from them if you want. You don't even have to buy one, or you can go buy one. I have 10, I think, now that I just saved for all the different formats. So ebook is a different format than the soft cover. There's a different format than the hard cover. All of those require different numbers, and you can either get them or you can have them provide you with books. So if you're writing a book to give out on stages and you're not going to sell it, they'll give you an ISBN. You can publish it through them. And Ingram Spark is the world's largest distributor and publisher printer in the world. So if you're going to print a book, any of the books that usually come through like your bookstore, they come from Ingram Spark. So you're already in with the big dogs with the quality that you want. And then they have different things you can choose. I chose the best colors, the best binding, which is the cardboard, because I was writing kids' books at the time. I wanted it to last generationally. And then I went with the fonts and all the stuff that it goes in there. And then I published it. And what happens when you publish it is 2 to 3 days goes by. They check it all and they say it's good to go, and they release it to the world. Then it's available at Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Amazon. And that's Ingram Sparks' process. This second book, or the book that I was working on that was published by Bestseller Publishing, they actually only did a hardcover and an ebook for me. And they had a different way of promoting it, and it was all Amazon centric. So they went KDP. So I got that experience, but my book's not available at Barnes & Noble or Target or Walmart like it was for my kids' books. And that kind of helped me with my sales, man. Whenever you push out, go buy it at Walmart, people are like, they go to Walmart. It's like they're already at that Walmart, or they're already at Target, or they're going to Barnes & Noble if they're readers. And if they can order the book through the store that they're used to getting it, that's cool. Even though Amazon is the biggest bookseller in the world, it's neat to be in that book need and any books are sold. Like three, but that's the help I got, you know.
With your leadership book, did you have a daily goal, or target, I guess you would say, for your how many pages or how many words you were trying to do per day? Like, did you set just for the accountability of it to say, this is my deadline and this is how I'm going to get to it?
Yeah. Well, pulling it together, I would do it at night. So I retired from the Air Force 3 times. The first time I retired from the Air Force is when I collected all the books, and I was like, what can I pull out of this? Because my Air Force experience was pretty epic. I worked at the White House with President Obama's administration, with 2 years advancing him, meaning I went before he showed up and set up like White House type of things. And then I did 2 years with him where I was living at the White House on Air Force One, doing everything, behind or in front of him, but with him. And those type of experiences were awesome. And then I'd worked in the special operations community. A lot of times we would pick up new and unique things, and the innovation cycle there was just amazing. So I pulled a lot of that out. And then I've been in command multiple times. I managed billions of dollars, thousands of people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I took all this stuff and it was just junk. It was like what goes on in people's heads, just a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I was like, I got to make this, I got to simplify this. I got to make this easier to consume. How can I give this to my kids? So I wrote it to give to my kids, to say, this is the experience that I had. And here's a compression offer for you of 30 years of watching the most elite people from the sidelines of history make huge decisions. And then this is what I pulled from it so that you can make quick decisions like I just started off the show with. I mean, people make it harder than what it is. But the number one thing that I found, the biggest thing that everyone misses is the cycle that everyone goes through. Most decisions in life happen like this. If you're concerned about money, the question is, how much does it cost? And if you're concerned about getting your car back faster, they're like, when can it be fixed? And then they find someone who can fix it. So the decision cycles: who, what, where, when, why, and if you're fancy, you can add how. And then there's a whole bunch of other crap that goes in there, like trust and risk, and all that is in this little ball of stuff that people confuse. And they're like, I'm not going to make a decision. And that's a big problem we have nowadays. People don't make decisions. They don't move out. They don't do the things that we used to do because we think it's hard, and it's not. It's really easy. You take those 3 questions that everyone asks and you pare it down to one. And the biggest decisions in the world that had success that I got to witness started with who. So I have like a little pirate flag, because I still subscribe to a lot of the military things. Yeah, I do. I have a little pirate flag. This is my pirate flag. It says who's first. And that's legit. That's what you should be thinking about. Like, who is first? If you find the right mechanic, they're going to get you your car back probably today. And it's going to be cheap because they know how to fix it, instead of trying to figure out what's going on and causing more hours to be added to your bill. If you've got a problem with money and you bring it to a CPA for taxes, that dude's going to save you time and money because he knows exactly what to do, or she knows exactly where to go to find the right tax codes. It's all wired into a system that we all know and love, but we like to think we control more than what we actually do. And what happens whenever I fix my car is I bring it to someone who knows how to fix my car. Then I wasted my time and my money because I bought the wrong part. And then the guy who knows what he's doing is like, yeah, you should have done this. Well, I'm not you, dude. I'm not an expert. But we all seem to think we can do that. We can fix our own problems. And so it all boils down to finding the right people. And then what I put on the TEDx stage was, you got to be careful who you let in your life because they will change it. And how that's phrased often is, your network is your net worth. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You are the average of the top 5 people that you hang around. And I would add, none of that is far from the truth. But like the top 5 people that most people hang around are on their phone. Like it's the people that they watch. It's their influencers who are actually influencing them, but they don't think that they are because they're not looking at it with that lens. They're looking at it as this guy can teach me how to whatever, instead of just finding the right person to do the job to begin with. So, roundabout answer, all of that in a nutshell.
Yeah, I like the you are what you eat. I mean, that's the same thing whether
Yeah.
you're talking about food or you're talking about what your eyes are eating. So it's eyes and ears and all that. For problem solving, I was a Marine, so I go with the SMEAC, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my Air Force story. We're outside of, I think it was the port of Kuwait or Shwaba, whatever, in Kuwait, after we were spraying off all the Humvees to get them to put back on to the ship to go home. So this was 2003 timeframe. And we cleaned them at the Hershey plant. Like, why do they make a chocolate plant in Kuwait? It's hot over there. And without going into all the details of how you have to deal with contractors to wash military vehicles because you can't wash them yourself. Anyway, we're back outside of in the motor pool, and we're outside this Air Force base. The Air Force base has a big wall, like a 30-foot wall around it, and we're just out there in the dirt. And it's not like sand like you're at the beach, even though we were right by the water. It was like dirt, like you're at a classic old-time landfill where they just dig a hole in the ground and throw trash in it. Mm-hmm. So we're sitting out there. It's getting into the evening, 120s, you know, maybe it was 130 during the day there. And certainly on the airstrip, it was in the 140s. Which, that was ridiculous. But we're out there. We're setting up our military cots because we got cots when we got back to the motor pool. So we're putting them in between the vehicles because we're just staying out there, sleeping under the stars. Yeah. And looking over this 30-foot wall in the distance, we just see a head. Like every now and then you see a head pop up and you're like, oh, what's that? Anyway, we continue on what we're doing. And then we find out after nightfall, you know, and we were able to go into the Air Force place to get some food at their, they had like a mall in there. It's like a mini mall inside.
Really nice over
there. We found out that that was the high dive for the Air Force's swimming pool. That's what we were seeing, was the head up every now and then. So now when people ask me, you know, should I join the military? I go, you know, well, yeah, the military could be the right thing. And they're like, well, which branch? And I go, well, I try the Air Force or the Space Force. I think I go with that way. Just for marketable skills and comfort. I don't know if you get a sword. No, I mean, the sword is a pretty good draw from the Marines, and you know, the Army they have a sword too, but you know, I needed to get that sword. So,
and you bought it, didn't you? They didn't issue it to you.
That's correct. I did buy that.
Here's my Marine story.
It was just a ceremonial sword too. So if you ever actually tried to use it, it wasn't going to work. That was disappointing. But
you know, my mom wanted me to go in the Army. Something fierce. Mm-hmm. Like you probably see, like right up here, this shadow box belonged to my grandpa, and he was in Special Forces. You know, he was in MAC VSOG, Material Assistance Command in Vietnam, and so they did a lot of cruel stuff, like really, really new but like unique things to these brand new Special Forces folks that were experiencing war. And I got a couple of his stories, but my mom wanted me to be like him. And this was the guy that, you know, before I got adopted, he's my male role model. So
Black Rose, was it?
Yeah. My dad, when he adopted me, he was in the Special Forces community too. So she was a military, like life as its package. She was an Army brat and an Army wife, and she wanted to be an Army mom. And my dad said the same thing. He's like, dude, you know, I'm looking at all these jobs. The one you want to go in is the Air Force. That's going to put you next to the top brass. You're going to have the best opportunity to do all the things you want to do. And I took his advice, obviously. But man, my mom went off. Like if she was still alive today, I'd call her and I'd be like, hey, tell everybody what you feel about me going in. But she wanted me to go in the Army, something fierce. But I still ended up in a whole bunch of Army units, man, because joint is spelled Green. And there was always an Army commander in all the joint commands that I assessed to and got into. So if it was a good joint job, like Joint Special Operations Command, I had an Army commander, man. I had an Army director. And then when I went out with the Rangers, I had an Army CG, a commanding general. He was an Army guy. The Air Force guy was a deputy. But, like I worked for Army, man. It was just Army, Army, Army. My whole career was still Army. But I did get a bed instead of a cot. My Marine story goes like this. I was in Iraq and I had to go out and set up an air route from the desert border of Syria. And so I took some Iraqi guys that I was working with out there into Al-Assad and Al-Arupa. And Al-Assad, when we landed there, they thought I was moving detainees. They were like, well, we're going to put these guys. And I was like, nah, man, they're with me. And they're like, nah, ain't nobody with you. We're putting them in here. And I'm like, nah, no, it's good. It's like they're technicians. He goes, nah. So I was like, you can't put them in there. And they're like, sir, because I was a captain at the time, I think. They're like, sir, we're putting them in there. You don't have the authority. The commander, you can talk to the commander. And I was like, well, I'm going with them. And they're like, you can't go with them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going. So I ended up sleeping in prison with my Iraqis. And then we went out to Arupa. And they were living off of 1 shower a week. People don't know what that life's like, but they were living off of 1 shower a week. So I showed up in my Air Force, combat uniform, which looks very different. Looks very, it doesn't look like I should be in combat. It looks like I should be in one of those malls that you were talking about earlier. It's just, so the Marines are like, what are you doing here? They're running around playing grab ass, doing PT. And then they stop and they're like, what are you doing here? You're in the Air Force. Why are you here? And I'm like, oh, I got to fix some stuff. You guys broke it. So, yeah, we went out and did that and came back. And there's more to that story, but I don't share that with the public because there's, people wearing pirate patches with me at that time. And, it's just an interesting time to be alive. But then I really appreciated my bed when I got back to Baghdad. And it might have been like stupid bombs and stuff that everyone's like, I'm like, it's not, most of that stuff's not gonna, you're not gonna mess, it's not gonna mess with you. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that didn't get to see all that stuff, and so maybe that's why I got selected for all those cool HUA joint jobs.
Yeah, it's putting yourself, or just the luck of being in the right place at the right time, is a lot of difference between military career. And then if you have that kind of sponsorship going and somebody wants to put you in the right place at the right time, that's good too. But it's easy to get lost in the numbers. I mean, that's a lot of the advice you get, especially on the enlisted side, even going into boot camp, is blend in.
Yeah.
Don't be in the front. Don't be in the back.
Man, I talked about that recently because my dad told me that. He goes, hey, if you get out there and your drill sergeant or whatever they call him in the Air Force doesn't know your name by the time you graduate, good job. And then I did. My drill sergeant, my training instructor is what they called it, didn't know who I was. And I thought I did well. And then later on, when I was working in the 4-stars office as the guy in the admin shop that had some experience because I went to Kuwait. They're like, hey, go out there and tell, I was like, okay, whatever. But when I was working out there, I was talking to the officers and they're like, hey, when you get picked up for this officer stuff, you're going to want to get in trouble. So I got in trouble a lot. The whole game shifted because they wanted you to like bear responsibility. So I had badges, like when they give you responsibility, like a leadership job, they gave you a badge so that they know who to yell at. I had badges go all the way up. I didn't have enough room on there. So I got yelled at because I wasn't wearing a badge, and they were like, why aren't you wearing a badge? You got the responsibility. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just not enough room. They're like, so I get yelled at for everything. And I got awards out of that and everything, but the experience that I got out of that was it's not that bad. People have opinions. Everyone's got one. They're like bathrooms in a house, man. They're regular. You're gonna have one, and it's not gonna be good. And the way you deal with that is it comes with experience. Like everyone takes it personal, right? Like it's yelled at something that's happening, and they're getting yelled at for it. So it's an interesting little tidbit to pull out of basic training.
Yeah, that's the best experience I got before going to the Marines was from a guy I was working with that was a Marine. And he said, no matter how much you think you're ready, you're never ready. No. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm good. I'm ready to go then because I'm not prepared.
The biggest successes that I've worked with since I've been out have all been Marines. They have a different mindset about the world. So having a Marine tell you, you're never going to be ready, you just got to go through it. It checks with worldly advice, man, because you're never going to be ready for anything in life. But if you start it, that's the first step to success. Most people don't take that step, but Marines seem to have that's already snuffed out for them. They've already figured that out. Like it's going to suck for a little bit. That's okay. It's supposed to. That's part of the process.
Yeah. Much of the military is just learning how to take crap from people. That's my experience.
And not taking it personal.
Yeah. In that you learn so much about, I think that's why you have a lot of people dealing in leadership from the military is because you learn so much about leadership, even from people that aren't leaders, just from working with different people. And then you have the leaders and you learn so much from the good ones and so much from the bad ones. And I'm not sure what the percentage is. I guess it depends on how often you're with good leaders and how often you're with bad, but you definitely appreciate the good leadership. And if you have any self-reflection at all, you start to ask yourself the question, what would I do in this situation? How could it be done differently? And then you have those saved up in your mind for maybe not that exact situation that comes down the road, but close enough to it where you can adjust into it quickly. And then that goes back to what you said at the beginning, which is you make that decision and then you go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. People need to make that decision, though. That's the biggest problem. People sit on the couch and watch Netflix instead of making decisions that can actually make them exponentially happier. I mean, just at a high level, they decide to not be happy. But I want to go back to that. Like, I learned a lot from bad leaders. I mean, I had a lot of great leaders. So let me state that right up front. But some of the leaders that I got to witness, maybe that I didn't work for, we all talked about them. So I learned way more about those dudes and those girls than I did about the leaders that I thought were good, because I was always talking about how it sucked or whatever they did. And reflection on military, I think a lot of military leaders are created, because I think leadership is a creation process. I think we're all born, but I don't think we're born to be like extremely good leaders. I think that takes time, no matter who you are and what you're born into. Even royalty has this training pipeline that they go through before they actually take the seat, right? But military spends a lot of time trying to figure out what leadership is. And leadership is a $1 billion a day problem that no one can figure out because everyone's different. And people try to fit two things into one quite often. They try to put management and leadership together like it's the same thing. And the difference is this: Henry Ford came up with management. Whenever he created the assembly line, he started looking at how it could work. And he said, these people that are making cars or making production quality stuff, they could be paid more if they just did one task simply. Goes back to the beginning of the show too. If you do one thing and you perfect it, it's going to be done faster. You're going to be really good at it. And then you can get paid more because you're good at it. Like, that's specialty. That's any degree. That's a doctorate, right? So that's that in theory. So he said, if I pay this person that's getting paid 20 cents, $2, so I'm going to give them 10 times more to manage a task that they know how to do, well, then they could be a manager. And the difference between management and leadership is the ability to think. So you have a lot of management pockets that think they're leaders, but they aren't changing anything. In order to be a leader, you have to figure out how it's going to improve, not how the process works, and correct people who aren't doing the process to your whatever. It doesn't matter what your whatever it is either. That's all opinionated too. Leadership is straight on, getting the ability to change whatever's going on and trying to make it better. And that's how you get to the front of things. That's what the leader is, right?
Mm.
Unless you're on a knob, then the leader's in the middle, so he can see what's going on at the front and in the back. In the back, you don't know what's going on in the front. Patton proved that whenever he came up with ground truth, right? He's getting all this telephone game, and the general's like, "This is what's going on." And he's like, "I don't believe you. Let's get in a Jeep and drive down to the battleground and get the truth, ground truth," right? So Patton proved you can't lead from the back. And I don't know who proved that you can't lead from the front, because I don't know where they're at. They're not in the history books, because history is written by the victors. So if you're looking at the middle set, you can figure out that 3 is the magic number in a group of 6, right? If you're the third person in, that's probably going to be the leader. If you're not at the front, but you're not at the back, you're probably going to have a good situational awareness of what needs to be done. You can actually figure out how to improve. And that's only done through military processes that we've had for thousands of years. Thousands. It's called the chain of command. The chain of command is on paper at the top, but that person who stays at the top doesn't know what's going on at the bottom. It's unask your chair, right? That's one of the sayings I got out of the military. Unask your chair, go figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in policing, one of my things was what makes good police, and that was you have to look for trouble, be nosy, and solve problems. And my policing career started before my Marine stuff did, and then they were intertwined for a little while, and then you have to pick one and say, I'm going to go farther in this one than this one, because it gets difficult to do both. Because right when you're doing things in one, you get pulled away to do the other. So I did the 8 years in the Marines, and then 14, a little over 14 in policing. And it's, there's a lot of crossover as far as leadership goes. And then for my big takeaway from leadership, it's how would you want that to be done if you were being told to do it, or if you were being led by someone, what kind of leader would you want? So it's going to work if you're a normal person, because you could be a crazy person and think this is how I will want my leader to be, and then that's not going to turn out well. So I think that's what the military is trying to find when they put you in those situations of action. It's trying to find out who you are. And in policing, it's a different type of thing. It's definitely, policing is different than war fighting. And I think that was one of the great things they did for the Iraq one the second time around, where you had your initial war fighters and then you got them out. And then when you wanted to take that role of policing, you put another group in. That made sense, because it wasn't going to go well if you didn't do that.
Yeah. Or Odierno, is that how you say it? General Odierno versus who's the guy that got in trouble? Oh man, I forget his name. But yeah, there's 2 different factions that came in with 2 different mission sets, and one put people on the floor, and the other one won hearts and mind. General Petraeus. Yeah. So I was there for both of them, and I saw the switch and the hearts and minds. I did a lot more community work with hearts and minds, and people it's still war, but it started to lessen. The war factor started to lessen the longer I was there with the hearts and mind guys. And I forget, I think it was Mountain that came out with the Army. But yeah, again, see, there you go. I was the Air Force guy with a bunch of Army dudes. And
that's definitely the Army angle. My understanding of special operations for like Green Berets and stuff, those are the people you drop in a few of them to change a country, just teaching the country how to change itself. So I like that there's different mission sets for all the special operations.
Yes. Rangers are door kickers. Those are the ones that will go in and be no joke, lethal, like quick. and they make quick decisions, and there's a lot of them. Green Berets train indigenous forces. They can still kick indoors and do all of that stuff. But like you drop a couple of those dudes in there, and then they're immediately training, a group of folks, and they're intelligent, and they're thinking about strategy, and they're showing leadership. They train leaders. The SEALs do it differently. They do. They're pretty closed off when it comes to like helping other people. But whenever you call them, they're not going to fail. It's just there's no failure in that option. I've always been impressed with all of the factions of special operations, and then the ones that don't get any credit, the ones that no one knows about, like combat control teams, like the ones that we left in Afghanistan. Well, that big mob of whatever was going on at the airport, there were still Air Force dudes there making sure that that plane could take off, even though it was not. I mean, they didn't obviously leave enough people because of the videos you probably saw. They obviously didn't have enough CCT, but you can't mass produce special operations. You can't. It's one of the rules. Like, it's just one of their laws. But I put them in my book. First one is people are more important than hardware, software, or anything else that's not a people. And you can't mass produce them, man. That's rule number 3. Rule number 5 is you can't have special operations without support of other forces. There's actual rules to this that are established because we've learned over time how to do that. But I like what you said when it comes to teams that need to trust each other. Your police experience breeds leadership because it has to. If there's a bunch of managers on your police force, well, that's not some place where people want to go and be managed. There has to be a trust factor there, and that's a leadership thing that comes out of the military and police force. I find it in fire departments too. There's a trust factor there. If you're in a job where you need to know if someone's shadow is going to hurt you or not, you're going to figure out where the real leaders are.
Yeah.
So if you're on a small team and you know everyone's shadow, you probably know them at a personal level, and you know if that shadow that's next to you is not one that's going to be friendly. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. In boot camp, I had this, I don't know if somebody told me about it or if I read it somewhere or if it was just something I discovered on my own. It might have been a mixture of all that, but I wouldn't call it a happy place. I would call it a calm place where you can go in your mind. And when you need that second, I mean, you're not going to be able to do it when you're in the middle of things. Yeah. It's not like a timeout card, that there isn't a timeout. It's more of when you have the moment to do this, this exercise of just going to this calm place. Mine was my bedroom in the house that I had gotten before I went to boot camp, and I had just gotten carpet put in, and it was blue carpet. And I remember walking across it for the first time because I lived in that place for a little while without carpet at all, just on concrete. And then I was like, okay, that's nice. And I bought a bed that was the first furniture I bought when I moved in there. And then I put in a ceiling fan, and it was a ceiling fan that could spin slowly. So it would still move the air, but it also had that calming effect of just slow things down. And that was my calm place, was imagining walking on the carpet barefoot and then just seeing the ceiling fan in the bed, not necessarily getting in the bed, but just knowing the bed's there, the ceiling fan's cool. And that, did you have, or do you have a place like that in your memory?
No, I don't. I do it a little differently. I use what you would probably know as box breathing, and I modify it. So box breathing, for your listeners who aren't familiar with military and police terms, is the ability to control your brain and your body functions through breath. And it looks like this. It's breathe in for 2 or 3 seconds and hold for 2 or 3 seconds, and then breathe out for 2 or 3 seconds and hold for 2 or 3 seconds. And you do this box in that way. I do, and I put it in my book, I think I put it in my book. I might have taken it out. I do something called 3 breathing. And what that looks like is instead of doing 4 things, I can do it quicker. So whenever I'm nervous, like I'm getting ready to go on stage, or I'm getting ready to do a mission that's a no-fail mission, or I'm getting ready to go whatever I'm nervous about, I remind my body that I'm excited about it, because nervousness and excitement are the same bodily reaction. The difference is how you process it. So I do a 3 breathing exercise, and it looks like this: 1, 2, 3, and I hold until I feel my mind and my body connect. And my mind is now told by my mind tells my body I'm in charge. Happen to a habit and control, and that's the same situation ish, but I don't step out of reality for more than 2 or 3 seconds to get there.
Hmm.
But I love the details that you put in, because I can definitely envision myself in your happy place by myself without you there, and feeling
Oh,
calm and calm. You know what I
I'm
mean?
insulted. I'm insulted.
Nah, we got to keep this show clean.
Just start an OnlyFans. Yeah, it's one of those things where you could, like, I think I might have talked to some people in boot camp about it, or certainly when we were deployed, I did, because you see it's easy to get overwhelmed by the situation, especially, they talk a lot about culture shock and things, but it's more of, for me, it was the heat was the big thing over there, where you go to 29 Palms and they give you this big speech about how this heat is just the same as it is over there. And you're like, okay, it's hot. Okay. And then you get over there and you're like, whoa.
It's hot.
And maybe the temperature is the same, but maybe it's the other things that are different. Like you're not going home, and you're not in your home. You're not in the United States. So maybe that's what added to it. And you could stand still and all your clothes would dry, but when you started walking, you were going to sweat. And that's why you ended up with the khaki deserts with just white all over it from all the salt leaving your body. And
for sure.
that goes into that not showering for, a week. But you could see people getting overwhelmed by it. And usually the way it works for me is, if I start to think I'm getting overwhelmed by something, then I either have the calm place, or you try to, as Jocko says, detach and then see what's going on. And I like a lot of his stuff are just marine things you learned, and then he shortens them, like good to go, reduced to good. But it's you can step back for the second and then look at other people and see how they're taking in the situation. And then that usually calms you down. And then you can identify if somebody is having an issue, and you can say, hey, what are you doing? Or, calm them down for a second, or ask them something totally out of it, if it's appropriate. Like, hey, when we get back to Camp Pendleton, we're going to go to Olive Garden and get, some breadsticks and a salad. And, it just seems far away, because you might have clicked something over in your mind where you're just like, look, this is it. I'm never going back. So I don't have to worry about that world. I'm just in this world. But I like the idea of those mental exercises. And I think that ties in greatly with people's creativity, because you have to be creative to deal with life sometimes. And then if you're doing other things like writing or tapping into some other creative source, it helps to be able to know how your mind works. So where do you think creativity comes from?
That's a deep question.
It is.
I used to live next to a 5-time Grammy award-winning songwriter. He wrote "What's Love Got to Do with It" and "Stop in the Name of Love." His name is Lamont Dozier, and I asked him that question because he had been so successful with creativity, and those are epic songs. I mean, everyone knows them still to today. So when he moved in and he introduced himself, he didn't tell me he was like this huge deal. And later I found out, and then I'd go in and pick his brain, and I'd ask him that. As a writer, that was very intriguing to me. And he'd tell me that he would listen to the world. So a lot of things that you will experience, and a lot of things that are taught today, they go back into breath work. So breathing and going back to the center. The first thing you do when you come into this world is breathe. And if you're biblical or not, then breath is something that gets in there. Buddhist, whenever you start, become a monk, they teach you how to breathe again. It's the same thing as basic training, where they teach you how to walk, talk, eat, what to wear, when to do whatever. All of that stuff goes back to one key thing, and it's breath work. So creativity for him came when he woke up in the morning and he took his first breath, and then he listened to the world. And he said a lot of the songs that he was writing down, a lot of his influences were coming from like the birds or the way the wind went. And it's the subtle details that you pick up when you write, or as you described, the blue carpet and the slow spinning fan, and the bed that you probably took a long time. You didn't go into that. You probably took a long time to pick that bed because it was important. And those type of things, they get really confused with the noise that goes on with the world. So creativity is now mixed with consumption. So every social media platform, everything that we listen to and we put in our ears and our eyes is noise. And you have to close it all down and go back to breath in order to be fully creative. So for me, creativity happens in the morning and at night when there's no noise, not even a fan running. And I can sit in my thoughts, write them down, and look at them as they come out of my head onto a piece of paper and become birthed into reality. And from there, I can move, I can manipulate, I can polish, or I can do what Lamont said was done to his songs. These artists would get it and they would embellish it to make it better. And for me, the embellishment is the small details that only I know, that I would like to share with other people so that they can grasp and relate. Because if I'm talking about sitting on my computer, miraculously, their computer looks like my computer. If I'm talking about being in my car, then they envision themselves in their car that looks like my story. And I'm able to relate something off of commonalities that if I just didn't take the time to be with myself, that solitude and focus in silence, I would not pull out in order to grasp audiences and actually convey a message that will help them. Creativity 101.
All right. I like it. I'm digging. Do you think that creativity is something that we manifest ourselves, or that it comes from somewhere else? That it's like the Romans would say is the muse or the genius that's outside of the person?
Yeah, let me answer that with some history.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, let's go. So Sharon, however you want to say it, the boatman that goes across River Styx is how he's known, right? And Charon, Charon, Charin is how you say it, or how you spell it. I don't know how you say it.
Say it however you want.
That's so Sharon. So Karen, let's go with Karen. So Karen is supposed to get you across the River Styx, and there's many ways that you've been told that he does that. What you've seen in Hollywood is the 2 coins on the eyes, and then they give those coins to get across the River Styx. And in the military, we're given coins because, there's a whole backstory on that. And this has all been pulled out of a creative cycle, because if you go back to antiquity, they did use coins for dead bodies, but the coins were put over their eyes because whenever someone dies, rigor mortis pops in, and it's kind of freaky to see someone's eyes open up after they're dead. So they would put something on there, usually coins. But where that came from was created in Britain later. Whenever they started saying this is why we're doing it, comes from antiquity. Antiquity didn't do that. They took Sharon's ogon, put it in his body, in his mouth, the dead person's mouth. They would put the coin in the mouth. They used to practice this as part of their death, burial, whatever process. So there was 1 coin, not 2, and it used to go in the mouth. And it stood for Sharon's obol, I think. Yeah, it's obol. It's small coin. So they would put a small coin in the mouth to get whoever their loved one was, into Valhalla for our intents and purposes, but into heaven, because they believed that they would trap the soul inside of the head with that. And then that turned into trapping the souls, not letting the soul escape out of the eyes. And all this creative process started to metastasize, right, into where it's at now. So when you were a warrior and you were asked to go to war, you would bring three things: a coin so that you could get across the river Styx. This is antiquity, right? You would bring your weapon and you bring your clothes. So the three most important things for survival. Now, what's happened is that story got turned into 2 coins. And now if you've done something to save my life, I'm going to give you a coin so that you can be in Valhalla with me as a fellow warrior, which turned into World War II. In World War II, a pilot was shot down out of the sky, right? And they allowed the pilot to keep one thing. And at that time, pilots were getting shot out of the sky. It was crazy to be in the Air Force. Like, it was just a death wish. So they all had coins to symbolize the warriors that they were. And he said, I want to keep my coin. So he escaped. And then he rolled out to the American lines and they drew down on him and they said, Holt, who goes there? And he said, I'm American. They're like, yeah, right. Because everyone looks like an American there. She's trying to, and he held up his coin and they said, let him in. And then that inspired warrior coins, these challenge coins that we all carry around in the military and police force. So the creativity cycle there, it goes through multiple breaths of reality. And what you see is something that you believe. And the cycle itself isn't something that we all control. So we're externally influenced to make our own decision on what reality really is. And then right now, that coin is something that we get challenged for, and it has drinking rules to it. So our reality and creativity have changed the story on something that started as a warrior ethos to keep the soul in the body, to pay for the warrior to go to Valhalla across the river Styx. And even that's contentious because there's another river that they're saying that you got to go across another river to get to Valhalla. So there's a whole bunch of creativity that's happened there. It's not just one person, it's a multitude of people. And then what story are you telling? What story do you know? And that becomes the reality for a lot of people. And unfortunately, people don't look into stuff like I just gave you about 3 years worth of research on where the coin came from, that people only go back to World War II and tell you the pilot got shot out of the sky and he showed his coin to get on base. That's it. You go way back, that creativity cycle, it's switched into something that people believe is true that really isn't. So, yeah, I think it's a mixture of both.
Number one, I'll take Elysium over Valhalla because getting up and going to war every day for eternity sounds terrible. But farming in a field, maybe that's okay. Number two. So the idea then is the Roman idea of genius. When you made something, made a sculpture or drew a picture or did whatever, somebody would say that's genius. And their belief was they weren't calling that person genius. They were calling the act genius, that it was from outside of them. Someone else was doing it from something else was doing it from some other place. So do you think the Romans were onto something with that? Or I know you said it's both. So it's outside of you. And then it's also things that just manifest through your own life. But can you tell the difference when you're writing and it's difficult and you're writing and it seems like it's writing itself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have those different feelings?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing to do is write about yourself, like in a positive light, especially from a military or police environment where you're taught to look at the negative first. You're like, what's wrong with this situation? Because the thing that's wrong will usually kill you. So we're all conditioned to think about ourselves and as a team member and not an individual. So the hardest thing for me is to write about myself. And when I write about myself, I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Like, who am I trying to impress here? And I hate it. So that's the hardest thing for me to get out, but it's part of the process because people don't just listen to everyone. They listen to experts or perceived experts. And now all you have to do to be perceived as an expert is have one good idea, and you're now a thought leader without the multitude of degrees that you used to have. And the genius that's created, as the Romans would say, it's something that externally influenced, but it comes from one account. So just as one artist, Michelangelo, or whatever Da Vinci, the artists that were known as great, they had external influences, just like all artists do, whether it's music, literature, or speeches. In fact, I would 100%. It's a whole multitude of things that makes that person what it is, and it's called experience, not genius. All right. So instead of flowing on things that are about me, I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time being creative about the truth and how I see the truth, and then how other people are reading the truth of others. So I used Jocko's book and Leif's book to figure out how to talk about myself, because I didn't know how to put that. And then their books obviously did well. New York Times bestseller, #1 bestseller. So I'm like, that's how I have to write about myself. I had the hardest time doing that. And then I still beat myself up whenever I get feedback. I got 1 out of like 100 feedback little inserts on my book. I got 1 that said, the author talks more about himself and he is the hero. And I took that to heart. I was like, oh, it's not what I wanted to convey. You didn't get past chapter 1, which is why I'm conditioned and able to talk to the things I'm about to share with you. If you can get past that chapter, you'll find out that I free flowed the rest of it. And those are things that help people. That comes right out of me. Because I think we're all conditioned to help build leaders from the environments that we came from. It's not about you. It's about building someone that can replace you. So those things were things that I had practiced and rehearsed and told people for years and years and years. And they were all things that I saw work. So whenever I was putting those down on paper, they just flowed out of me. But what am I going to tell people whenever someone picks up my book so that they know that I'm telling them the truth? And my fiance actually helped me with my speeches. She's like, hey, you need to tell them that you're a top 40 under 40. I'm like, but I'm not that age anymore. I'm like 40, whatever. She's like, yeah, but that's credibility. She's like, you need to tell them that you worked at the White House. I'm like, that seems braggadocious. And she's like, yeah, but there's a way to say it. And the way you say it is not braggadocious. I'm like, God, I feel bad whenever I bring it up. Like, I don't want my first words to be like, hey, did you know I was, because I don't live in the past, man. I take the past and try to give it to the future. And whenever I'm doing that, whenever I take the past and give it to the future, it comes out on me a lot better than looking at the past myself and saying, how was my past self? How does that fit in the future? I don't know. I don't know how that fits, but I don't want to talk about it all the time.
I think the way you can look at politicians and how they deal with this, and that is you get somebody else to introduce you. So at political events, you'll have the person that's introducing the person that's going to be doing the talking. Yeah. And then you avoid the whole, I'm just talking about myself. And I think I'm more of the view, or I digest it easier if somebody starts with what they're saying. For public speaking wise, tell me what you're going to tell me, and then tell me what you told me. That's the classic. And I like that. Okay. But I also don't want my time wasted. So don't tell me a few times the same thing. So maybe find a way to do that better. And then the other is, let me learn about you through the stories. Don't just give me a resume.
Yes.
So you say, I learned this while working at the White House. I learned this when I was doing this, instead of just running down a pedigree That's what makes it's, I mean, it's the difference between an interview and public speaking, really. Is
Yeah.
public speaking, are you trying, you're already there. You're already there.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
and you see it a little with podcasts, like with Joe Rogan. They just start out talking.
Yep.
There's no introduction. There's no introduction of him. There's no real introduction of the people. You just know who they are. So, and if you don't know who they are, you'll learn
Yeah.
by listening to it. So, yeah, I see when you're talking for a purpose. So if you're talking about leadership, you're going to have to talk about why you know about leadership. So
Yep.
I don't know. I think I'd put it in stories whenever possible. And I think I look at leadership as kind of like a snowball where you have that first bit of leadership you learned, probably from your family.
Yeah.
And then you've packed something on that, like your friends or school and experiences of just seeing strangers, watching TV, doing other things, and then into jobs you've had, people you've seen leading, the military, all these other things, and then self-reflection, and you end up with it like that. So it's, I don't know, how do you visualize leadership? Or
Yeah, I thought very similar, because that's the way we convey things very fast by doing something that's proven, and that's the way it's been proven over hundreds of years to work. What I've been told to do is, by one of the top speaking coaches in the world, and the kids are home. And let me let them in. Do you mind for a second? Let me
no, go
pause
ahead.
this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll pause it.
Thanks.
You're good. Resuming. Boom. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, what I've been taught by the world's best speaking coaches was to get people's attention first, because there's so much noise now. People, they'll listen to you if you're a proven entity. So if they don't know you, you have to start off with your credentials, and you don't have to start off with all of them. You don't have to go through the laundry list of, like, for whatever reason, people like to hear some things from me. So for my side, when someone asks me, what do you do? I say, well, I'm a #1 best-selling author in 13 categories, and I speak on stages. I just got done with the TED stage. So now I do thoughts, and that's where I'm at. I like to go into podcasts and shows and studios now to show people some of the things that I learned while I was in the military. And the immediacy of #1 best-selling author gets people to look at me. Whereas if I were doing the military approach, I would say, hey, I talk to people and I do it this way. But, at the end of the day, I'm just providing my lessons learned. That skips over the civilian mindset. Unfortunately, they don't listen to that as much as we're conditioned to listen to that, because we find people of value and we put them in our immediate circle around us to where we can ask them questions and trust them. That's not how a lot of people are raised. In fact, they think of everyone as a threat. So unless you have something of benefit to benefit them, they do not want to associate with you. So the #1 speaking coach in the world was on Grant Cardone's team, and I did a TV show 2 years ago now, where it was like America's Got Talent with Ted, and providing value to the world. And he started this TV show series, and I got to be one of the top speakers in the nation. And what I did was I shared a presidential story, and then they gave me some special training on top of that, because I was in one of the top 150. They wanted the TV show to go well. So they brought in some great people. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense now, because my kid can process things. My kid can process things a lot faster than I can. And he dismisses noise way better than I do, because he's grown up in it. I mean, the internet was not something we grew up in, man. Like, we had TV, but we didn't have all this noise like 24/7. I mean, remember when the TV used to shut off? You go into colors and you'd be like,
Yeah.
we're going to
Well,
resume
how
in the
old are
morning.
you? How old are you, dude?
46. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're basically the same age. Yeah. I remember black and white TVs and our first VCR, beta, all that stuff.
Yeah.
With advice from other people. I can think of a few times in life where I took advice, and at the time I thought, this isn't right.
Yeah.
One time when I was a trooper in Virginia, and me and a few other guys started this labor union for state police, 2006 timeframe. We called it the Virginia Troopers Union. And then Virginia is a right to work state. So union is not a nice word if you're in policing. And it wasn't a union that was going to strike. It was a union to try to get some equal representation or equal voice or something just with management. If your company is great and everything's good, you don't need a union. The union's there to solve some sort of problem, and a union can get corrupted just as easy as a company can get corrupted. So my thing was, let's call it the Virginia Troopers Union, because that's what it is. And there's laws in Virginia about who can join a union and who can't. And if you're a trooper or police, can you do it? And I mean, we looked a lot into it before we named it that. And then there was a lot of pressure to change it. So we changed the name to the Virginia Troopers Alliance, which I thought at the time was a mistake. And then thinking back on it now, years later, I think it was a mistake. So I don't know if I remember those examples of listening to advice and then feeling deep down that that's wrong. I don't know if that just sticks out because it was such a big deal to me or because it didn't happen that often. But it's that feeling, and this is off the subject. You go into a restaurant and it just doesn't feel right.
Yep.
Do you then say, let's go somewhere else? I mean, I've gotten to the point in life now where I'm like, okay, so me and my wife can walk in somewhere, and if we just go, this is weird, let's go, then we just go. Yeah. And if one person feels it and the other person doesn't, that's what we do. And I think that might have come out of just the experience of life. Certainly policing and military experience helps, I think. But just because you have the number one speech coach in the world tell you something doesn't mean it has to be right. And it's going to work for a market. So what's your market? Yeah. I looked at your TED talk. I think it's a fine talk. It's a better suit. I like the suit. So,
I got a story on that one. Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing I would say is, when you start a talk, and it depends on the people and the topic and where you are, but when you start the talk with a lot of, here's my bona fides, I tune out. So I go back to that whole idea of why I became a teacher, why I ever stepped into leadership roles. It's because I looked at something that happened and then said, how could that be done differently to a way where I feel better about it as a person that's following or a person that's involved in it somehow. And I did a lot of public speaking as a trooper to military groups for just safety type things. Before you go on your 96 or whatever, you have the police come in and talk to you about not drinking and driving. And then I thought, well, I'm in the military, or if I'm listening to this, how would I want to hear this, and what's going to stick with me? So I definitely went with you have targets. You don't overdo it with them. So you get to it. What did you write? What did I write here? Don't overthink it. And I think if in your gut you think I'm talking about myself a lot, then you're talking about yourself a lot. So you got to reduce it. And even in my poetry, when I write poetry and I have a lot of I's in it, I think, how can I say this without the I?
Yeah, and when I think we've all been conditioned to say that too. In our generation, we've been told that a lot.
About which part?
About the I's. Yeah. Like, I remember my English teacher used to say, don't put I's in there. You don't want to talk like that. My Harvard professors would say that too. that's why I never got, a good degree. See, I said
that's the way to drop that's the way to drop the experience right there, is like that. Like my Harvard professor told me that I needed to do this, this, and this. So now the person knows, oh, Harvard. Then the question is it Harvard nowadays, or is it Harvard when Harvard was Harvard?
Yeah.
Or was Harvard ever really Harvard and we just didn't know it? So
Well,
I don't know. I've had a class with a Harvard instructor, and it was the most difficult class I've ever had. I had to take off time from work to do it. It was a statistics class, and at the end of it, I was like, this is pretty great that I made it through this class, but I won't do it again. And I was a little aggravated that other people that didn't do anything got the same grade, but that's group work. Anyway.
yeah. I think you nailed it when you said it depends on who you're talking to. Because if I was talking to people that were experienced like us, I wouldn't have written the book like I wrote it. I wouldn't have had the TED talk like I wrote it. I'm writing to, and I'm speaking to people who are going through things that we already went through. So they're listening to the world in a different tune. They're on a different channel, different planet, most of them. So if you're not proving who you are at the beginning, they're tuning out. Like the conversations that we have that are real and like they would say they're confrontational. Just because you don't agree with something, it's confrontational nowadays. That's amazes me. It just amazes me, the night and day difference from generation to generation. And yeah, man, I'm glad you hit that, because I really had a hard time trying to figure out how I was going to talk to these people. And now after, like, I don't know, man, it's been out for a month. It got 20,000 views. Normal TED Talk, 411 views in the first month. So it's doing really well.
That's good.
Yeah. So the number one coach, he was right on that, because I'm hitting the audience. Those people are hitting me up. Those people are buying my book. Now my book's been on the bestseller list for 120 days, and I don't like the way it's written, man. But thank you. Here's
That's
the suit,
the
here's
three
the suit
rules
story. Yeah. Here's the
Okay.
suit story. My soon to be wife was like, "Hey, what are you gonna wear?" And I'm like, probably, what I got on. She's like, "No." She's like, "You're gonna be on the biggest stage you've ever been on." I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I spoke to thousands of people, just like you. They make us get up and talk to thousands of people at a time about stuff that they want us to talk about. And so I was like, I don't know about that. She's like, yeah, it's gonna be. So you need to go get a suit. And I'm like, all right, I'll go down to the store and get one. She's like, not any store. You need to find somebody that does suits. And so the suit, that was the most expensive suit I ever owned. I love the suit. But I don't know if I'll ever wear it again. It's one of those suits. It's like, ooh, that's nice, but
it's an example. That's an example of good advice. She said, get a suit, and you went and got a suit, and you got a suit that was tailored, and the shoes were good. The suit was good. As mom always said, a man looks better in blue. So, or I think she might've said, every man looks better in blue, something like that. I wrote it down when she said it, because I was like, that's a good quote.
My mom wanted me in green. She's like,
well, green for the reason, but a green suit is going to be weird.
Yeah.
Unless it's alphas or something,
Yeah.
But
no, I like
know.
that.
I consider certainly you can't argue with success, but then it comes down to why is the success, and you can't take every road. So what would have been if it was done differently? But that would be my advice, is do it how you think you would want to do it. If you weren't listening to someone else, how would you want to receive it? And then try one like that, and then see what happens. See how you feel about it. I think it would be better to have less success and feel better about something, but that's not everybody.
Yeah.
Some people could be all about the success. Give me the numbers, give me the pay. I think that's the difference. Putting it in football, where you have Tom Brady saying, I'll get paid less in order to keep a better team around me. That sounds like a great decision, versus someone else that says, I want to be the highest paid quarterback, and to the detriment of the team. I mean, they still won the Super Bowl, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think you got to look at who's giving you advice, and if you don't want to be anything like them, then you don't take it. Yeah, poor people give poor advice all the time, and it's plentiful. And the people who are successful and where you want to be, like you might think Grant Cardone is not that great. I met the man. I mean, I'm not going to defame him because he goes after people that do that, but I don't want to be Grant Cardone. But the person that he brought in to talk about how the world listens, yeah, that dude's super powerful on stage. He has a presence. And can I be him? Absolutely not. Absolutely don't want to be. But does he have something that I can take away? Yeah. Does it make me uncomfortable? Doesn't anything that causes growth make you uncomfortable? I don't go to the gym to be comfortable. And I don't take advice from the gym rats there either, who are always the same size, always have the same complaints, always eating the wrong things, you know? So if you want to take advice, this goes back to the principle that I talked about on that stage and in my book and what I shared earlier. You know, you got to look at who is in your life. If you find an expert, then their expert advice is going to save you time doing whatever it is you're trying to do. And in this specific incident with the book, how it was restructured based off of the person who does books, bestsellers all the time, I got to trust them. And it worked. I mean, it did really well. Was it the book I would have wrote? No. But would it have changed as many lives? No, not if I wouldn't have got the right person to help me. My talk, if I would have given it the way I wanted to give it, all my friends would have watched it and said, good job. But then, you know, I would have had the same friends. I wouldn't be able to make the same impacts. I wouldn't be on, you know, on the radar at all. I don't think, if I would have done it the way I would have done, which would have been comfortable for me. And I would have said the same thing to the same folks instead of reaching a new audience. So yeah, I mean, I hear you. I don't agree with you, but I hear you. You know, it was a tough
good
call.
points. I like the way you put it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what your perspective is and what your target is. When you prepare for talks, how do you decide how to format it? And how many do you like practice it a lot, or are you more of a outline person and go through topics, or does it depend on who you're talking to, I guess?
Yeah, it always depends, man. It's like anything in life. It depends is the military answer that works in everything, right? If I'm doing a stage to executives, I have a different way of phrasing that. I have a different time period too. If I'm giving it to like the TED Talk, when I was giving a TED Talk to those people, I looked at the audience. Most of them were not feeling being in the seat for a long time. So I wasn't supposed to start off that talk with making them stand up. But you've been in seats for a long time, haven't you? You know, when you're sitting there forever, it just, these people aren't going to listen to me, and then they're not going to respond to me, and they're not going to catch what I'm giving them. So, you know, I'm looking at the audience all the time, waiting for the audience feedback. And if they're not feeling what I'm putting down, I'll change it. As far as talks, though, I have a good idea of who I'm talking to normally on stages, and then I'll tailor it specifically to them. For small businesses that I work with, I usually do a pulse of what's going on in the company. The leaders usually like the assessments that I do of people. I move around every 2 years, man. I mean, I've been a military guy my whole life. So figuring out what people are about and what they're saying and when they're faking it, you know, we all have that radar, especially being police and military. You can tell a fake right away. You're like, all right, dude, yeah, you're telling me something, but it ain't the truth. Being able to pick that up in employees where these younger cats just don't have the experience like that, and saying, hey, you know, I think this guy's telling you what he wants you to hear because that's what you want to hear. But I don't think that's the right thing for this person. So maybe start figuring out what their passions are. So that's the intimate things that I'll do with companies. But a lot of the stages that I'll do, they want me to do something similar to what I did on the TED stage. And that's share how you can simplify a decision, because we make it too hard, man. We make everything too hard. And then whenever we make the decision, we're like, that was a hard decision. No, it wasn't. What you have for dinner is what you have for dinner. And then you forget what it was 2 days later. So why are we spending so much time trying to figure out where we're going to eat? But I'm with you too. If you're in the restaurant and don't feel right, don't stay there.
Yeah.
Something I didn't pick up until I was a couple years ago, actually. I mean, like, I'm not feeling this place. All right, let's go.
Yeah. And it's strange. You can feel it right when you walk in, or you can feel it after you've already sat down. It's
something.
And you just go, okay. And I guess it comes with the experience, because you have to go through enough times where you've had the feeling and then you ignored it. And then it didn't work out how you thought it would. So I don't know if it didn't work out because you had a feeling and you made it not work out or what, but
reticulator activating system. People find what they're looking for. So if your subconscious is saying it's not right, it's going to find it not being right. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
When you do public speaking, what are your top 3 things after to measure whether it was successful or not?
People coming up after is the biggest thing. Number one. And they'll tell me, what they got out of it. I'll take a mental note of that. And like some of the stories that I hit, some of them I hit today. I just make sure I repeat them because they're helpful. And when people say that they're helpful, I like to repeat them. So a couple of the breathing one, the decision one, those are things that always resonate. People always get something out of there. Like, I am overthinking that. I am putting too much in my life. I have so much going on in my head. If I just got it out and dumped it every once in a while, good to go. The second thing is followers. When people push up and follow me on a profile, and then they'll send me a message and be like, hey, I saw you talk at wherever. Just wanted to say whatever. And then the third measure is like just the audience reaction, man. Like when you start talking, you'll stand up in front of this audience, whether it's on a stage or it's just a room. And the first thing that usually happens is you stand up and your voice is still in the seat behind you. So you got this dry voice, you got something that's just nervousness that's coming out of you. You don't know how to work with it. And you start looking around the audience, looking at you, and you think it's you. And a couple cycles into it, you start realizing that the audience is the true measure of whether or not they're receiving you. So if they're not paying attention, they'll start looking off. And now with phones, people are always looking at their phones. If they put their phone down and start listening to you, you got them. You're teaching them something that they wouldn't hear anywhere else. So those are my 3.
Okay. I like those. What kind of marketing do you do for your written things and for your public speaking?
I don't really market too well. I'll say that's one of my biggest failures is I find people that can market for me because I know I'm not good at it. Like I'm told like every show that I do or every stage that I get on, I'm supposed to plug my book. Bro, your listeners want my book. I'll give it to them. That's how terrible I am at marketing. My book is 99 cents. I'm not trying to make money off my book. I just want to be able to get into someone's ears and show them that they have a life it's phenomenal. If they just make the right decisions, they can make a bigger difference if they want to, but it's still a decision that they have to make. And if they want to be comfortable, that's cool too. I don't care. But just the decisions that they make in their life, even if it's what to wear, it could be easier, man. And if I can help you figure that out, golden. But marketing, not really. I'm not good at marketing, man, at all. I have people that do that.
Okay. Well, that's how you do your marketing, is you get people to do marketing.
Yeah, my book, I didn't market my book. Someone else marketed my book. That's why I did so well. If I would have marketed it, you know what I mean? It would have
was it a separate marketing from your publisher, or
the publisher did all the marketing? So yeah, they had a 1-hour conference call with me. They got the gist of my book, asked me some questions, figured out that I do have experience. I'm not just speaking on it like a Simon Sinek. I didn't just study leadership. I actually did it. And then they're like, hey, yeah, this is coming from a point of experience. Yeah, if we restructure it, we can probably do well with it. We're going to do international sales. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Okay. And they're like, yeah, we're going to write the book description for you. I'm like, okay. Yeah. All right, we're going to put in these categories. Again, I don't. Yep. Okay. So when they started pushing this out like that, I was like, yeah, I'm glad that I'm working with these guys instead of trying to do it myself. My kids' books, I think I just got lucky, and then I looked at the process, and if you work at anything, you can get really lucky at it. You can become successful with the more work you put in. You get luckier that way.
I like the children's books that are written involving the children. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
With the military, do you think that the country would benefit? I guess you could say with any country benefit, not just the U.S., but would the U.S. benefit from everyone having to do a certain term of service for the country, whether it's in the military, in the classic military role, or in something that is more of a civil service through the country? Like, what's your thoughts on mandatory service?
I don't think
not a conscription, but
Yeah. You mean like Israel does? No,
yeah.
I don't believe in that. I don't think that would work for America. Yeah, I don't think everyone has the right mindset to be standardized in that way. And there's a lot of people that don't make it through basic training for that reason. And if we're looking at percentages, was it like 10% were in World War I, World War II, 5% were in Vietnam, and like less than 1% served overseas in a war zone, like currently? If we're looking at that percentage, 99% of the world right now that we know in America has not experienced anything that has to do with the standards at that level. And that goes down to life, man. They teach you how to live life. How should you cut your hair? Should you be clean shaven? What to wear? How is your hygiene? Basically, how do you walk? How do you talk? How do you acronym? All the things, the standards, your opinions, a lot of them can be levied upon you. And I think if we did a military esque type of mandatory service, there would be a different opinion on military service. But I think right now people say thank you for your service and they don't mean it. It's just a conditioned response, like have a good day, thank you, come again. And instead, we're not getting spit in the face like the Vietnam era. Thank God for that. But still,
That'll come back around.
It's cyclic. Yeah, it is. So if we had that, then there would be people that would be moving out of country and they would be avoiding, they'd be draft dodger-esque type of people that would try to figure out how to not be in the military because they're not going to be able to conform like that, man. So the freedoms that this country produces from the few people that produce the freedoms of everything from police, fire, all your first responders and military, they provide a safe environment for people to be creative like no other place on earth. And if we took that from them in a spot where they might be creative and we made them standard, then I think we as a country would be losing out on a lot of things that we benefit from now.
What's the best way for people to follow what you do? I've seen your website. I like it. Looks good.
Thanks, man. I hate my website.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I need to find somebody for it because, I have a place where all of the shows that I do are on. I think that one's pretty good. A lot of people have told me that that's good, but like my website itself is just like, reach out to me if you want me on stage. And speakers bureaus that do that, the agents will do that for me, if someone wants to hit me up on stage. But the whole thing on that, I pulled a lot of it down because I only do 3 clients a year. My kids are here. They interrupted the show. I like to spend time with my kids. I like to drive them to school. It's stuff that I didn't get to do, for a long time. So now that I can have time with the kids, that's my priority. And so I only do, a couple shows, a couple things, but I put out content every week on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I call it Monday Minutes. So Atlas Aultman on LinkedIn, Atlas Aultman on Instagram. Those are the best ways to follow me. But like, if you want to hire me, I'm not really too. I'm not. I don't care about money like other people do, I guess. I just want to make a difference, and I think that you do too, and that's why you have a podcast, and it's able to reach the people that it's supposed to reach.
Tens of people.
Yeah, tens. But you know, it's putting something out there that's going to live forever. And that's why I love podcasts, man. I love podcasts because somebody somewhere is going to reach down 10 years from now, pull this out and get something out of it. And they're going to realize like what our generation's about based off of some of the conversations we had, you know, and that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm big on that, but money, I mean, dude, I'm set. So I'm good. I don't need anything. I want to help people that want to be helped. And there's a lot of people that don't want to be helped.
Yep. Any thoughts in closing? Anything you wanted to cover that we didn't cover?
No, man. Hey, I gotta commend you because these things take a lot of effort. Every podcast and every production that you put out on the internet, it takes a lot more than people really realize to do this. And then whenever someone reaches your show and they have that vibe that they like to listen to, you're putting this, someone somewhere is going to just to dive deep down into your content that you're producing, and you're putting this positive vibe out there, whether you like it or not. And I just got to commend you on doing that. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. Appreciate our conversation. I wrote down a lot of good things. So this is going to be great. Can't wait to re-listen to it.
Yeah, it was a good talk. I appreciate your time and your conversation. I'll put all your links in the show notes. So if people want to check those out, they'll be there for them. And I'll talk to you on the other side of this musical exit. Appreciate your time.